Hey everybody, this video is about the general information and general operation of this machine here. And what is this machine? This is a Freightliner FLU419. This is what happens when Freightliner takes a Mercedes Unimog in a Case 580 Backhoe and it creates a baby. This was a contracted thing Freightliner did with the military. I'm not honestly exactly sure how involved they were and what they were involved with. I am not a military expert and make no claim to be one. But the basic gist of it is a Unimog chassis. It was made by Mercedes. Unimog has been around since the late 40s and were created for the purpose of basically a tractor truck combination utility vehicle. They were built with the capability of using all sorts of implements, front and rear, just like you would find on any other tractor, plows, snowblowers. They're used all over the world for a variety of emergency vehicles. Militaries all over the world use them for troop transport, ambulance, command centers, etc. This particular version, called the 419, is based upon a Unimog 406 chassis. They made two different versions of this. One was this version. They made approximately 2,100 of them for the US military. This is also frequently called a C truck. SEE stands for Small Emplacement Excavator. Loader on the front, Case 580 Backhoe on the rear. They did make another one called HMMH, High Mobility Material Handler. That has a fork truck, forks on the front and a crane on the rear. I've never operated one of those, but I know that they have locking hydraulic suspension, which sounds kind of cool until you have to work on it, of course. C trucks, they're roughly about 21 feet long, about 8 feet wide. They stand 8 foot 6 inches tall and are approximately 15,900 pounds. Of course, it's no secret that Mercedes Unimogs are world renowned for their off-road ability. And obviously, Case has been making 580 backhoes since the late 60s, early 70s. Very versatile machine, a lot of power in a small package. The big difference between this and a standard backhoe you would see in the civilian world is obviously the versatility to tackle any terrain it comes upon. Huge ground clearance, and it is able to travel on the road. This is currently titled and registered. The tire size is 12R20. These are 40-inch tall tires. Top speed on this vehicle is 45. What makes this vehicle so versatile over any other thing else driving on the road is the axles. So these are called ported axles. Here's your differential in the middle. Here's your axle tube. And then it drops off down. There's a set of gears inside of that hub, similar to what you would find on a tractor. It does have four-wheel disc brakes, hydraulic with air assist. Onboard air compressor provides air to many of the functions of the vehicle and gives you power for your braking system. The ground clearance on this vehicle in stock form is 17 inches. And the approach angle is 40 degrees. As you can see, it has monstrous springs. Front loader has a width of 81.5 inches. The lift height is 98 inches. Breakout force is 6,000 pounds. A maximum lift capacity is 3,300 pounds, and that is a 0.7 cubic yard bucket with the ice teeth in it. The loader is removable relatively quickly too. A couple minutes, you got this thing off. Got shutoffs and quick connects here to remove this big bolt down at the bottom here. You thread that out. You throw a jack, which I don't have the original jack, but I made one. Throw a little jack into that pocket right there, a couple of pumps, and you just back out. This grill here, we added in. The radiator was fairly exposed right there. I'm not sure if there was something that was supposed to go there, but we didn't get it, so we put something there for brush protection. As you can see on the hood, I added hood pins, something you'd typically see on an older muscle car. There are locking mechanisms on the hood that require a little square drive tool. Goes in that hole down there, and another one up top. The sun's in my eyes, so I don't know if I'm getting it. They're kind of a pain in the ass to get to. So this hood was bent because there's a switch that they put factory underneath the hood that I actually removed. It is to turn on the top lights up here for when you're doing loader operation, and switches between those top lights and the lower lights, typical to what you would find on your plow truck. Because the switch is underneath the hood and a pain in the ass to get to, a lot of these hoods you will find have been bent up. The GIs will just tug on the edge of the hood till they can get their arm underneath to flick the switch. Okay, so here we are under the hood. As I said before, air assist hydraulic brakes, also has a hydraulic clutch. The mill on this monster is a Mercedes-Benz OM352. That is an inline 6-cylinder diesel, 5.7 liter, 346 cubic inches. It is 110 horsepower and 234 foot-pounds of torque. Extremely common Benz engine. Been around for many years. Tried, tested. Here you'll see the hour meter for anybody who's shopping one of these. That is where you find the hour meter. Front passenger side of the engine. This has 27 hours on the engine. Another key feature on these vehicles is the auxiliary hydraulics. So here we have an auxiliary hydraulic tank, which also supplies to the front loader. Here is auxiliary hydraulic lines with a reel. This is for hydraulic tooling. This vehicle originally came with a hydraulic chainsaw, a hammer drill, and a jackhammer. But basically any hydraulic tool you could run off of this. Jaws of life, multiple different hydraulic saws, and it's just really kind of cool that you can have hydraulic power that you can drag off the side of the vehicle for multiple uses. I'm sure you could figure out how to run a log splitter and all sorts of things. So while I'm right here, you'll see the battery box. Two 12-volt batteries run in series. There is an air tank right there. And up above it is your little green cover for your slave port. This lever right here is the lock that goes up. I'm not sure if I can get you to see it. Up there, that locks the backhoe in place. That's to keep it from moving during transport. Right there is the valve body that controls the loader. The loader controls are inside. Normally there would be a spare tire here. I removed that for some extra room. These levers here control the hydraulic that picks the backhoe up, which I will demonstrate a little bit later. And it also controls the locks that lock the backhoe in place. There's a switch there for your rear work lights, and the lower one activates the hydraulics and high idle to operate the auxiliary hydraulic lines. Over here we have a hydraulic cooling system. There's fans built into the back of that, which I'll show you once I get up on top. Back here we have the locks that lock the backhoe in place. Backhoe sits in there. These come down, lock it in place. Also in port for your air, it has emergency and service air ports for a trailer. This does not have the hitch in it, but would normally have pintle hitch. And let's see, your capacity on towing, pretty sure it's 17,000 pounds. So here's the stowed position of the backhoe. Pretty peculiar looking. Kind of looks like a grasshopper that's been run over by a train. But that's it. It's fairly balanced for what it is and the amount of weight that is back here. It is a fairly stable for what it is. Definitely a little bouncy driving down the road, but you would expect that with tires like this. It does come with work lights. Obviously I've replaced those with LEDs. I did add these in. Never really have enough light. Those are strobes. I also put lights up there on the headboard. There's two toolboxes on this side. These would house your hydraulic tools. I do not have any of the hydraulic tools. This is a 24 volt winch that I pull out. It has a plate apparatus on the bottom with a pin, so I can hook it into the bucket, the backhoe bucket. Plant the bucket down on the ground, and all sorts of winch power. This is also, here is lines for a secondary valve body, so I could run hydraulic power off of the auxiliary lines to a control valve. This box they would have like the jackhammer and stuff like that standing up in it. Obviously, being a towing and recovery business, this is set up for off-road recovery. Okay, so let's move on into the cab. Small. That is the best word to describe the whole situation. Small. When you're in there, you're in there. So let me start off for the people that might be shopping one of these. Just so you know the function. Not everything is labeled. Some is labeled, some is not. Here's your heater. You have high and low fan switch here. This shuts the heater core off, on and off. Obviously, here's a vent door. Light switch, typical military 24 volt light switch. This is your windshield heaters. The windshield has, I'll point it out to you once I climb up in there, has similar to the rear defrost in a lot of vehicles. You can just sort of see the lines here down below, and that heats up the windshield. Hazards, starter, wipers. This does have electric wipers. Vast improvement over my 5-ton that has air wipers. The air wipers are noisy. They're kind of erratic. There's really no delay. It's just sort of low and angry mode. Clutch pedal, brake pedal, gas pedal. So here's a throttle here. So this is how you set your throttle when you start the vehicle. All the way down like it is now is what shuts the vehicle off. You do not shut the vehicle off with the keys. You shut the vehicle off by pushing that handle down, which starves the vehicle for fuel, and that's what shuts it off. You can adjust your idle speed. Also comes in handy when you're working the vehicle, different terrains. You really don't have to worry about stalling, or you're putting along and decide to move the loader. For some reason, you can set it to a proper RPM where you're not going to stall the engine. Okay, so here we have the dashboard. This is the emergency brake. That is your high beam, low beam, and your horn. It's not your blinker. Your blinker is over there, that little green switch. Speedometer. This one has 1,024 miles on it. Here in the middle is your tachometer, the little guy. Up here you have dummy lights for your PTO, differential lockers, parking brake, clogged air filter, and your gear splitter. Here above is a grade indicator for when you are traversing sideways across a hill. You don't get too out of control. They recommend, the military recommends 30%. You can most definitely traverse more than 30%, but naturally there has to be humongous safety factors built in for the military. This big gauge over here, you have your blinkers, oil pressure, water temperature, fuel gauge down at the bottom, high beam indicator for your headlights, and a charging light in case you lose charge. There is an charge gauge over here. The press to test button is to test your battery power. Down here is your turn signals. It takes a little getting used to that. And then there's cold start here for an ether system. Up there's just a switch panel that I made for all the auxiliary lights that I put on, and the fuses there. The seats have some adjustment to them, forward, back, up and down. You can adjust the back of the seat. There is a little bit of storage underneath the seat, both of them. Obviously the little red trays I added in. Okay, so here we are in between the two seats. We have PTO. This is the rear PTO that controls the backhoe. Transmission driven. The front PTO, like I said, belt drive for the loader and the auxiliaries. Here are your loader controls. You can control those while you're driving on the road, as crazy as that sounds. Main, battery, ground switch. Trailer air, the supplies, opens the valve to supply air to the trailer ports that I showed you in the back. That is a military test plug. The locker switch back here, that is currently in the lock position. Full locker. The middle position is four-wheel drive, and that's two-wheel drive. You can hear it hissing. That's an air-powered switch. Okay, so this shifter here is your range selector. Reverse. Low range, forward. High range, forward. Typically you would drive down the road in high range, and probably low range would be to crawl through the woods and work around your property or whatever you were going to do. So there's a lot of confusion because this thing's got a lot of gears. So let's see if I can try to explain this in one take. I doubt it. So it's a 4-speed. So you select your range based upon your terrain. Say you're going to crawl through the woods, so you put it in low range, forward. So you have first gear. Then you pull up your splitter, and when you step on your clutch, the clutch switch sends a signal and allows this splitter to basically change gears for you. So clutch down, click, it would go into, I guess, first high, you would call it. After first high, you're going to go into second, Splitter down, clutch down, second gear, clutch out. Splitter up, clutch down, it automatically goes into 2 high, clutch out. Splitter down, clutch in, third, clutch out. Splitter up, clutch down, click, you'll hear the transmission, clutch out. Splitter down, clutch in, fourth, clutch out, splitter up, clutch down, clutch out, and at that point you would be in 4 high. So why so many gears and why so many ranges? So the first thing to remember is this thing is half tractor and half truck. When you are traversing through the bush in anything that is manual transmission, especially something that's relatively underpowered, remember this is only 110 horsepower, those gears and the selection of ranges make it unbelievably versatile to the point where you can really kind of motor through the woods in relatively at the same throttle position, and just by using the transmission correctly, once you get used to it, it's an extremely valuable tool. Okay, so let's start her up. So first thing you're gonna do is set your throttle. I kind of know where to set mine, but every one of them is going to be a little bit different. Ground switch on. Is your key on, clutch down, and listen to the switch when I step on the clutch. Let me do it again in case you didn't hear it. Sound comes from over here. You can hear that clicking noise. You guys that are having problems with your splitter on your shifter, if you do not hear that clicking sound, the transmission is not going to split. That is not going to work. And it most likely also will not start. The switch is down here behind the pedal. Right there, that silver thing with the rubber on it. A lot of these vehicles, they'll be bypassed because then they can still start the vehicle, but the splitter won't work. So you need to look for that. That switch failed on this. That's how I discovered and know all of this. That is a momentary switch that I bought from Amazon for like $4 or something. Versus trying to find the original one. Hard to find, coming from across the sea, and obviously considerably expensive. So back to where we were. Keys on, throttle set. Push the start button. You see my throttle's a little high. Pull it down. So here you have the control lamp. That is on and will be until the air, yeah, there you go, about 70 the air goes. Sometimes it'll come back on, this will drop down, and then it'll come back up and the system levels off. There are a primary and a secondary air system in the vehicle, just like any truck that has air brakes. So only with the lights on will these lights illuminate. Obviously that's the parking brake is on. So let me show you the shifter. I don't even need to have it in gear. Splitter's down, splitter up into high range. Now all I'm going to do is step on the clutch. Let me see if I can get both. You'll see this light light up. So that switches ranges right there. Excuse me, it doesn't switch ranges, it splits the gear. Back to the air gauge, should have mentioned this secondary needle here shows you how much air you were using when applying the brake. Here's your dip lock light right here. That's four-wheel drive. That all the way back is locked. Light should come on. I undo the switch, back into four-wheel drive, and then back into two-wheel drive. PTO light, clutch in. I just out of habit from running tow trucks. I throw it first and second, make sure the transmission is lined up, everything is slowed down, there's no clashing. Grab the PTO handle, throw it in, foot off the clutch, rear PTO is engaged. So now let's run the loader. First handle here picks the loader up and down. Second handle is your bucket control. Kind of slow now, of course we're at idle speed. Second lever, bucket control. So the nice feature about this is if you want to back drag with the bucket, it does have float. So you do have down pressure. And you also have the ability to float. So here's your down pressure. If you push all the way down, now you're in float. So now you can back drag with the bucket without worrying about it digging it. There is a little detent there so you know you're in float. That's your basic shutoff procedure. They say in the manual to not throw the switches, that switch or the battery ground switch while the vehicle's running. It can damage the alternator. So you always kill by the fuel. A lot of people that are not familiar with diesels and how they function is that's how a diesel is shut off anyways. The ignition switch ultimately shuts the fuel off for the vehicle, compared to a gasoline engine where you're actually shutting ignition off. You're killing spark to the vehicle. A diesel, you shut it off by killing the fuel. So that makes sense to those who are familiar with diesels. Those who are not, hopefully you learned something today. Here's the wires for the windshield defrost that I mentioned before and forgot to show you. And the switch for the switch the headlights from the primary headlights to the upper headlights, I moved right down here, right beside the light switch. You know, it's not something you're going to be throwing all the time, but just to get it out of the way and not have it underneath the hood. I don't know who came up with that idea, but it was lame. I also forgot to mention, this is trailer brake control valve when you have a air brake trailer on the back of it. Okay, passenger side. Again, seat has storage underneath it. This one does not have the adjustments that the driver's side has. You got a little door pocket. That's about it. Door pocket under the seat, and you got this little cubby hole. The feet area for the passenger is basically straight out in front, so you're sort of in like the lawn chair position. I made this little door here to check the oil. Dipstick's right behind it, so normally you'd have to pull the whole hood, which is big, and there's metal brackets underneath that could poke through the seat. A typical military design where some things are just so well thought out and other things are so absurd. It's ridiculous. You got to pull the interior out of the vehicle to check the oil. And somebody could have made a little door right there. So I imagine there was probably several of these blown up because they were never checked. Okay, so let's talk about the backhoe here. This is a backhoe off of a Case 580. They are removable. I have not tried to remove it, so I can't speak of how difficult it is. So we have a 24-inch bucket. This was not the original bucket. This is a replacement. Digging depth of this machine is 14 feet. Digging radius, 17 foot 8 inches. Loading height is 11 feet. The swing arc is 180 degrees. And the digging force is 10,000 pounds. So it's an animal, especially on something of this size. Again, like I said, a Case 580 backhoe is no toy, and it is probably the most popular of the smaller construction backhoe type situation. A lot of towns, a lot of municipalities use them. A very versatile size machine. So there's some stuff on this that you're not going to see on one of these originally. Starting with this valve. The purpose of this valve could be twofold. One would be for potentially a hydraulic winch off of the boom, and the other one would be for thumb. So we have here the hydraulic lines run up. All of this was all added on as a protectant. And it comes out here with quick connects. Also, on the other side, here is for an electric winch. I decided to go with an electric winch just simply because it was a little bit lighter. The one that's in the toolbox that I showed you earlier. And that pins on right here to this pinhole on the bucket. Sink the teeth in. Unbelievable amount of pulling power, and versatile because you can set your angle up in any direction you want. So in order to run that valve, instead of breaking into the hydraulics that operate the backhoe itself, I wanted to keep them separate. So I ran those off of the auxiliaries. So here are on-off valves where I can separate the hydraulic pressure from the reel and the lines. So I can split it either way. So I'm only running one circuit at a time. Standard case controls, foot pedals for left and right. Your stabilizers are on the outside. Bucket, dipper, and boom. Down here we have an RPM switch. That is to bump up the RPMs. And that is a bucket control. As I demo, can pick the front bucket up or down from back here from that switch. That switch goes to those solenoids that are on the back of the valve that goes through the cab to the handles. So that is nice because if you're digging a trench, the theory behind all of that, you're digging a trench is you can control that bucket. You can put it down for extra stability, or you can pick it up and pull yourself along with the backhoe, moving yourself along so you can continue to dig your trench without moving the vehicle. Here are the cooling fans for the hydraulic system. I cut that hole in the cab protector. There is a little vent door in there that you open up from the cab, but it doesn't get too much air with the cab protector on it. Obviously, fuel jerry cans would normally go right there. A little catwalk on this side so you can move around. That cap right there, beside the black cup holders, that cap right there is for alcohol. That goes into the air brake system to prevent freezing. Another common issue that I want to demonstrate here. You see guys online on all the Facebook forums and stuff trying to figure out how to lock the backhoe back into place. So here's the locking pin. Obviously this lever pulls this plate off. So you have to cradle the backhoe up and you pull the boom back towards you. When the boom gets up to the top of its travel, you actually push the lever forward, and that is what locks it into place. I'm gonna try to put my tripod here so you guys can see how it works. It's peculiar. It doesn't even feel right when you're doing it. Okay, so here we are, going to demonstrate how to lock the boom. The vehicle is just off idle, probably 1,000 RPM. Everybody thinks they have to crank the thing up to 2 grand. Totally unnecessary. It's all about timing. Okay, so my closing thoughts on the Mog. It's obviously pretty cool, super unique, absolutely one of a kind. I don't know of anything else that is comparable, certainly not comparable in ability as one unit. Of course, without the backhoe and the loader, it is a better off-road machine than it is now. A Case 580 backhoe is a little bit more functionable as a backhoe than this is. An excavator is more functionable than a backhoe for digging. You can go on and on forever. But as far as a universal type machine, there's not really a whole lot you can't do with this thing, whether it's in the woods, around your farm, or just driving down the road as a showpiece or a conversation piece, if that's your if that's your thing. So overall, an extremely unique machine. Very happy that I finally got my hands on one. I bought this just around the time they were starting to evaporate from the military auction market. There's very few of them available now, if any, and the prices are going crazy. I actually just watched an auction 2 nights ago, and one of these went for $43,000, and that of course is before the auction fee. So some dude's paying 45 grand for this. Now, of course, it's a Mercedes, a desirable, the Unimog is desirable, but to pay 30 or 40 grand for a decent backhoe is certainly not unusual, and to pay that much for a backhoe that you can drive to go get coffee with, that's unheard of. So you can see where the value comes from. Anyhow, that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully I helped some people. It was another vehicle that was really hard to get real life information on. That's why I wanted to make the video. Piss poor editing, the noise, and my fingers and thumbs in front of the video screen. Cold as hell today, so I'm sure that I'm doing plenty of shivering and sniffling. So thank you all for your patience. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care.